Did you do it? So recording in progress. Yeah, that's important. So everyone here, you're being recorded. This is a warning. Oh, a warning. You are being recorded. No, but thank you, Steve. That's really lovely. I think when you say ponderings, musings, it just basically means it's empirically lacking, maybe, or overly theoretical. No, I'm just joking. I am a theorist, so I tend to be overly theoretical. But it's just so lovely to be here with you, with everyone. Thank you for making it out. It's such so many friends in the room, and also so many friends online, friends I haven't seen for a while. In fact, so thank you, Maria, joining us all the way from Germany, late at night, I imagine. So, because if I do the math, yes, it's late at night. So welcome. um, and yeah, no, so many lovely friends in the room, and it's great also to be doing it in this room too, because this is the room where I probably teach the most, because I have run 3 music classes here, and all of them now take place in this room. So I'm in this room quite a lot. Yeah, yeah, familiar room. Yay. Yeah, no, and they have such lovely colleagues here. So it's kind of funny to be doing this book launch now, because my friend Thomas Holler, who's just on his way here. We're knee deep into finishing a little music education textbook. So really, all I've been thinking about is this music education textbook, and nothing to do with this book project for the last month. But now I'm back in it. I'm like, oh yes, this book is coming out, and I'm so happy it's coming out now. It's kind of the capstone of like maybe 5 years of writing, interviewing, essays. Actually, longer than that, 5 to 10 years. Some of the interviews go back about 10 years. The interviews with Tim Ingold and Tim Lilburn go back to around 2016 or 2017. The 2 Tims in the book. And yeah, I'm just very grateful. Some of our contributors are in the flesh right here. So we have Zuzana Vasko, and Charles Scott, who were part of a chapter in the book with Hisun Bai, who cannot make it here. And we also have Marion Benkaiouche, a longtime collaborator with an organization I work with, New Curriculum Group, and interview chapter to the book. And we have as well online 2 other interview contributors. We have, as I already mentioned, Tim Lilburn from the University of Victoria. I'm so happy to have you here, Tim. You've been such a great mentor to me from afar over the years, and of course, my another mentor, an up close mentor, Michael Ling. Also, really grateful to have you here. They both contribute. They both have interviews in the book. So again, this book is a collection of single authored essays. Some of them revised versions of previous writings, and some of them new, and a bunch of interviews. Some of them old, most of them new, with some lovely people here. So I honestly don't want to present too much here. I'd love to make it more of a conversation, if possible, or at least to the extent that I can. But I'll say a little bit about the book. Yeah, right at the top. I will try to awkwardly share my PowerPoint. 1 second. Boom, boom, boom. View slideshow. Sorry, thank you. So yeah, this is the book cover. Not very exciting cover. Once there's a paperback version in about a year's time, there'll be a like a proper cover. But for now, this is the cover of the hard copy. A much cheaper paperback version will be out relatively soon, so I'll let everyone know when that's out, because this is the expensive library version. That's hard copy, costs a lot of money. Oh, did my PowerPoint go away? Oh, yes, I have to share. Yes, yes. Thank you, Ron. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, if Ron wasn't here, I'd already have messed up. Okay, thank you. Good. Now we're actually looking at the thing I was meant to be looking at. So yeah, this is the cover of the book. So the book is yeah, it's kind of starting from this place where it's responding to in many ways, it's responding to a lot of recent writing about climate change, but a specific, maybe a specific subset of this writing that is not overly focused on, you know, beating your head with solution talk, about climate change. Because I do think, we get to the ends of we get to the ends of conferences. We get to the end of a conference on environmental education, or we get to the end of a conference, teaching education conference. And then it kind of gets to the question, but what do we do with all this? We're anxious. We're distressed. And now what? And I've always kind of thought, or I've not always thought, I've come to think that the moment we start asking those frantic questions, what do we do now? We're already putting ourselves, in some ways, we're already in a losing battle. We're already putting ourselves into not the right position in order to address the problem. So the book is in many ways sort of grappling with what does it mean to admit that we don't know how to be in this, that we've entered a period in history that is quite new and quite unknown, and that what would it truly mean to admit, in terms of curriculum, in terms of many things, pedagogy, that we don't know what to do. Embracing that sort of intellectual, spiritual, existential humility. So it starts from a place not a place of offering solutions, but a place of ignorance, really, trying to open up that space of ignorance as much as we can. So a lot of the beginning of the talk talks about how a lot of the beginning of the book speaks about how so much of our discourse, in just painting a really broad brush here, but so much of our discourse in policy and education, in environmental policy, education, curriculum, is government talk is solely focused on addressing climate change through the problem of carbon emissions, chiefly. The big boogeyman is carbon emissions. If we can bring down carbon emissions, all of these other problems you might associate with that jargon, the polycrisis, will simply, remedy themselves. So this is a nice figure I adapted with Thomas Hohler, where I think it's really important that I'll speak. Unfortunately, Bill Rees couldn't be here, but William Rees was a big, from UBC, population ecologist, professor emeritus at UBC. He's the founder of the methodology of ecological footprint analysis, sort of the popularization of the term carrying capacity and how we measure carrying capacity in relation to particular land mass and how much resources are appropriated to keep that land mass running the way it's running. So we put overshoot right at the top because, in a way, this book is grappling with the fact that we are deep into ecological overshoot, and there's all kinds of ways we can measure it. But the lovely thing is, it's very actually remarkably simple to measure carrying capacity and overshoot in the way Rees does. Eli, take a seat anywhere you like. A new friend. So we get very focused on carbon emissions, and this leads us to all kinds of inadequate ways of thinking about the problem, in my opinion, where we sort of neglect a lot of aspects of the polycrisis that don't fall neatly into the problem of carbon emissions. And it also leads us to simplistic thinking, where if we just produce enough electric cars that are extremely mineral intensive to produce and all, just massively complex, all these other problems will fall away. So we're not really able to truly tackle the problem of endless growth and all the complex entanglement that this is suggesting. So I'll be very quick. So that kind of leads us to think about what are the simplest stories we can tell. Again, a big part of the book is sort of saying that our stories are often too complex, but also too simplistic. There's two aspects of it, where we have flattening and reductive discourses, but we also have discourses that are needlessly technocratic, I would say, just to be blunt about it. So this is a very simple guiding heuristic that informs this work. It also informed work that I've done since with the a special issue on Beyond the Meta Crisis with Marion Benkaiouche, Thomas Hohler, my co-writers, also Cristiano right there, Demora. We all contributed articles to that special issue. And in many ways, me and my colleagues, some of us were, I won't speak for Cristiano, but some of us were working from this just a simple way of framing some of these issues, where yes, there are lots of aspects of this that we don't understand and are very complex. And these histories go back far, far, far longer. We can talk about, a 500-year history of imperialist land grabs is contributing to this. But if we simplify the story within, a generational span that is relatable, and a big part of this book is talking about the problems of generations and how to think intergenerationally in this time. It's particularly the chapter with Tim Ingold that frames the book is specifically about the problem of generations. So if we try to find a generational time span that is relatable here, we might not want to go back before 1945, like our grandparents, the era of many of our grandparents, our parents in some cases. It's a relatable time period. And the math, the empirical overshoot data, I'm not going to beat you over the head with it, shows quite clearly just how much things have accelerated in terms of overshoot in this post-1945 period. So there is this idea that goes back to the famous report by Donella and Dennis Meadows, The Limits to Growth, 1971, and I guess a total team of 17 researchers, where they really mathematically and with the sort of the computers, the computer power that they had at the time, were able to remarkably model the limits of growth, remarkably accurately, with very, very limited computing powers too. So the idea here is that, at some point, at various points, actually, we will reach limits to growth. And that's a complex thing in itself. What are those limits? We can talk about that later. And the only result to the only sort of logical outcome of a great acceleration that reaches limits will be forms of unraveling. And this is not my idea. Sort of the metaphor of unraveling is very prevalent in the history of societal collapse. It's prevalent in the work of Bill Rees. But there is this recent coinage. In response to great acceleration, some scholars have started talking about a great unraveling. Personally, I don't like to use the term great so much, but the point is navigating that there will be forms of social and environmental unraveling that come once limits to growth once these limits are breached. And we will have to grapple with that. Some scholars offer this idea that once, in the face of these limits, there will be a time where no new social order clearly manifests, and this has been articulated by sociologists like Wolfgang Streeck and others as a time of interregnum, which I articulate in the book as a kind of post-growth interregnum, where no new, social order is clearly manifest, and we're in this sort of state of indeterminacy. So some of the really, really broad framings that eventually, very quickly, get us into pedagogical framings about what to do with this. And honestly, a big part of this book, chapter 2, it all comes from a piece that I wrote in 2020, 21, about speaking with my undergraduate students here, in fact, through 2019 through 21, about lots of things, lots of disasters. You guys remember some of those disasters. We were experiencing many forest fires around that period of time. And in fact, in 21 into 22, we had the terrible heat dome and flooding events the same year. So my students were, some of my students in some of these classes were, in fact, at this time, quite eager to speak about these events, honestly, because some of them were directly affected by it. I had students who were, had to be airlifted out of hope because of the flooding. I had students, lots of commotion in this time. It was a time of disaster and unraveling, and it was our early sort of grappling with it, at least one of my early grapplings with it in terms of working seriously with my students. So that piece is in the book as what do we talk about when we talk about climate change? Anyway, so we have this kind of very simple figure of various stages that you sort of iteratively, constantly find yourself in. Various stages of what's happening, why me, grappling with what does this mean for me, including how heavy that it can feel, how terrible this can feel, the crushing existential stuff, and what now? What do we do with it? So the book grapples with these stages in many different ways. We talk about this in all kinds of from all kinds of perspectives. It's also linked with actual practices a lot of the time. Like Gert Bista was another important influence in this book. I was speaking with him a bit about some of his ideas as this book was coming together. He was going to be an interview in the book, but it never quite manifested, right? But he has this way of linking, or I have this way of linking this sort of framework with some of his work, where what's happening is connected with the stage of interruption. Practices based on interruption are always connected to something about what's happening, realizing some new point of awareness. Why me is linked with practices that Bista, sorry, my Dutch is terrible, frames as practices of suspension. Once you grapple with why me, you have to take a moment to suspend the interruption and work through that. And finally, what now is linked with what Bista describes as sustenance, how to move forward in some way. So we talk a lot about practices that may be associated with these stages. And these stages, as you can kind of see from the spiral, they repeat again and again and again and again. And you always find yourself in new points and new moments, new sites of awareness, new things become visible at various points. So this is a simple heuristic that frames the book. I went backwards. Here we go. Yeah. So this is some artwork. My brother, Chicho Campbell, Neil Chicho Campbell, he produced a lot of, or some of the artwork for the book, a lot of artwork that has to do with knots. Knots are sort of a metaphor through the three that frame the three sections of the book. And the three sections of the book are actually those sections: what's happening, why me, and what now. Those are the three parts of the book. And this is a nice, I won't say too much about this, but it's quite simple. We have a tendency, I think, to think about, especially in moments where we're sort of anxious and frenzied, we have trouble thinking intergenerationally. And there's a lot of talk in the book about how we sort of freeze generations and think of them almost stratigraphically as these layers. And there's lots of actual generational theory that seems to even articulate generation as these layers. Tim Ingold and others, other educationalists too, really strongly encourage us to think about generations as these woven bands, where yes, things do unravel, bands do break, things are lost. There is loss, there is unraveling, but there is a kind of structural integrity that can allow the generational bands to hold together, even in the face of great loss. So this is another really guiding image for the book as well. Okay, I think I've talked probably enough. This is maybe a final point. I guess I'll move my Zoom ribbon here. This is a figure that came out of the chapter with Bill Rees, Thomas Holler and I talking to Bill Rees from UBC, speaking about different values around technology, different values around progress. What is progress? What is technological progress? That is also, as you might imagine, an important framing in the book. This is rather technical. I won't go into it totally, but you can sort of see how this table in itself, high energy tools versus low energy tools, shows an important, shows a different ways of thinking about what is technological progress, different ways of thinking about what is technology and our relationship to it. We have this idea of that we are very much sucked into solutions that are all about high energy tools. And these high energy tools have properties and features that we should be aware of that differ from low energy tools. It's not to simply say that high energy tools are are a problem. No, low energy tools are better. We need to go back to the Stone Age or something like this. No, not absolutely not. It's just a detailed conversation about how our value systems, especially in education, actually become subsumed and framed around notions of technological progress, which is a really important point, I think, for Bill Rees, who observes throughout his long educational career at UBC that much of education, and this is something we grapple with in the book. Much of education is about preserving social order, keeping the dominant social order going in various ways. And so the chapter with Rees is really grappling with, well, why has education failed to address the problem of ecological overshoot so long? And for Rees, it has a lot to do with the values that we place in technology. And so another important framing around the low growth, post growth conversation. So thank you guys for listening to some of these big ideas that encapsulate the book. That was a little. I'm gonna stop sharing because I could share a few other things, but that's probably enough. And it'd be nice to just see people's faces up there. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so thank you for listening to some of those ideas that frame the book. So again, I didn't want to make it all about me and have this whole long speech here. I'm so grateful to have the contributors in the room, some of the contributors in the room. And it'd be nice to just, I think, hear from some of you folks about what your thoughts about all of this, how the conversations we had. I will try, and really just you're all involved in this work in some way or another. You all have different ways of doing this work. So I just love to hear anything you want to share about your contribution and how you see this kind of work, this kind of book, and your own work in relation to it. Just to remind the people in the room about, again, I should have done this maybe more at the beginning, about what do we actually have in the book in terms of a table of contents and everything. And I apologize. The hard copies are in the mail. They were actually supposed to arrive today. I was supposed to have tons of hard copies here, but they didn't make it. So my apologies. But yeah, just to kind of give people a sense of what's in there, we have a lovely foreword by William Pinar. William Pinar couldn't be here today. He was going to be online because he's in the States. Again, several chapters by myself. An interview chapter with William Rees on the failure to address educational overshoot. A chapter with Marion Benkaiouche on the ontology of disaster. Marion is a disaster researcher, and it was important to talk to her about disaster because disaster response pedagogy was, as I mentioned earlier, a kind of key opening for this work. In part 2, we have an interview with Tim Lilburn, and in fact, actually, Tim, it's 3 interviews going back to 2017 with you, and I just want to say Tim's recent book. Numinous Seditions, Interiority and Climate Change was an important, probably, if I'm going to be honest, probably the key work I am responding to in this book. I think I can't think of another work that's more central. So I'd love to hear. We'll hopefully get a chance to hear from Tim. How to Be Here: 3 Conversations with Tim Lilburn. In part 3, we have our chapter with Michael Ling, which is actually a really interesting chapter. Michael Ling is an anthropologist, as you guys know, as everyone knows here. But he's an educationalist too, and when we have him here in the Faculty of Education since the 90s. So Michael's going to be talking about something I think is actually really interesting. He's widening the circle of relations, and it actually starts off with a direct critique on the more than human, the coinage more than human, and the coinage other than human. And he gets into actually a really in-depth conversation about contemplative practices that may help us widen our circle of relations behind the human. So a lovely post-humanist chapter with Michael Ling. And then finally, or or penultimately, I should say, we have a really great chapter. I'm so grateful this made it in the book. It's called Pre-Conversations on the Sacred and Sacrifice, a dialogue with Zuzana Vasko, Charles Scott, and Hee Soon Bai. We're lucky to have two of you here today. And that was a nice group conversation. I remember in the yard in the summer, in August or something. And yeah, no, it was so lovely. This is work we've been talking about for a while about what does it mean to sacrifice? What does it mean to make sacrifices? And what is the relationship of sacrifice to the sacred? So I'll let you folks speak about that. And then finally, as I said, a final interview with Tim Ingold on the problem of generations. So that's a bit about what's in the book. There's also essays from me in there, but you can read those if you want. And otherwise, maybe I'll start. Actually, I'll start with whoever wants to start in that case. We could start with the beginning. Actually, I don't really want to go to any one contributor. Oh, you'll start with the beginning. Okay, we'll go in order. We'll go in order. Yeah. Otherwise, it'll just be crazy. It'll be crazy if we don't go in order. So in that case, if we're going in order, Marion, you're first. So Charles said go in order, so we'll go in order. Yeah, no, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that yeah, both Thomas Holler conducted the interview with Bill Rees with me, and Marion. They're both my longtime collaborators with New Curriculum Group. So I'm grateful that you guys were featured in the book. Yeah, Marion, do you want to say anything about your chapter? And one thing I like that we managed to do in it is we go through an ontological description of accidents. What's the other one? Ontological description of crisis and an ontological description of disaster. So accident, crisis, disaster. And I thought that was a nice framing. Yeah. Anything you want to offer in regards to this?
Yeah. Hopefully everybody online can hear. I'm sure they'll let us know if they can't. Oh, right. And then people in this room also have to hear me. Duh. Well, I think so I talk about this in the chapter, but I feel like a lot of the time when I bring it up, people think it's like not that significant. So I want to bring up like one of the anecdotes. So in 2023, I was working for this very big consulting firm, and they sent us to Dawson Creek to help them map out their water infrastructure essentially. So like we started from the source river, which is the Kiskatnaw, and then we went all the way to how the water was treated, and then how it was used around town. And then also there's another village a little south of Dawson Creek called Pooskoopi, and they purchase water from the city of Dawson Creek. So there's obviously like a lot of like interconnectedness there. And so we went there. So we worked with the city for a couple of months, and then we spent 4 days in Dawson Creek to kind of do workshops with the water treatment plant operators and, like the CA, the chief administrative officer of the city and the emergency response director. And in the middle of that, it was April 28th, which is the National Day of Mourning. So if you're not familiar with that day, it's a day that commemorates people who die on the job. And so they invited us to participate in the ceremony. Not to participate, but like to like be there for the ceremony. So it was at City Hall, and we're on this very like large piece of lawn, and there were speeches from the mayor. And there had been two people that year who had died on their way to work, and they died driving. They were in car accidents. And like we're so focused on disasters being these like intense like crisis moments. So like, when Cary and I unpack the etymology of the word crisis, it means a turning point in a disease. And what I thought is what I think is so interesting is that we really ignore these what I call like mundane disasters of like urban planning. We just accept that people just die on their way to work or die on their way from work. We just accept that like there's going to be roadkill, and then we just like do these ceremonies, and then like the next, then the afternoon just continue working. And we don't really change, like we don't change. Um, not as individuals, but like from a societal perspective, there's nothing that stops people from, the next day, like having to drive into work. And there's nothing that stops, cities from prioritizing highway construction. And there's a lot of conversation, but not a lot of change. And it's well, I don't know. So to me, it was just very interesting how we like. I think the reason we chose the ontology of disaster is really because we're interested in how people perceive disasters. Like, why is a tornado, which is obviously a disaster, more disastrous than all of the people? Like, we all know people who have been impacted by cars. Like our high school. So Carrie, Eli, and I went to high school together, and one of our music teachers was killed cycling. And his wife was pregnant at the time. So, his child never met him. And that's a horrible crisis. And I feel like those are just the sorts of things that, like, through looking through the etymology of these terms, come Thomas is here. Yeah, I think that was the main thing I was hoping we could restructure is just this entire way of living is we're clearly at a turning point. Um, but a crisis is like a turning point for the better or for the worse, right? Like in a disease, it could mean that you're healing, but it can also mean that you will die from this disease. And I think there's a lot of existential angst, but we have to, you can't really ignore existentialism. You just kind of have to face up to it. So
I,
anyway,
I know. Thank you, Marion. And no, and I think it was nice for you to bring these experiences to the fore about your work as a disaster consultant up north, in relation to my conversations that I was having with students who were just very, existentially disturbed by everything here. And you're speaking about how this crisis, even though it's a turning point, the idea of polycrisis we figured out is kind of like paradoxical because it's a turning point that's been flattened. We're stuck in a period where a turning is inevitable, but where do we turn? So the idea of polycrisis itself is almost a paradoxical idea. Sorry, Charles, get in there, please. Yeah, yeah.
I thought you ended on a really profound point that you picked up on, Cary, about the existential dimensions here. And I love the ontology word in your title. I want to go around and screaming in the streets. It's all about ontology. Do you understand? It's ontology. But and I think we've probably all seen this in the classrooms. The students they know what's going on, and they want to talk about it, and they want answers, and they want to figure this out. Um, Renata de Sousa and I wrote a paper about this in the Religions Journal, and we said that often what happens with the students is the problem is this: they go to the counselors, and the counselors are wonderful, but everything gets framed as a psychological problem, and we're going, no, it's existential, it's spiritual, and that's, I think, such an important part. So, could you say a bit more about that? Just think.
Yeah, yeah.
more about, no, about what? Sorry. Oh, yeah. I mean,
Well, Marion, do you want to say anything about the fallen star etymology of disasters? You spoke about crisis, and maybe that connects what Charles is bringing up.
the thing is, I'm a bit anxious because
Okay, okay.
no, no, no,
You're anxious.
because I meant no, 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 because I meant to review the chapter.
So you don't even know what's in there, basically.
I just like perfectly.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah, well, just
I
the
can.
idea of a fallen
Yeah.
star.
So
Yeah,
disaster, like the root of the word is des astra. So like astra is star. So it means fallen star. And actually, so I went to this really interesting like summer school last year, and there was a girl there who had been studying all of these historical conception events, supernova related events. So when what essentially, maybe not supernova, but like basically like from I think like the 11th century to the 18th century, she had researched all of these different cultures' responses to comets. And I don't know if you're like familiar with this, but in a lot of cultures, like comets are actually like a bad omen. And apparently like for example, when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, apparently his wife, like there was a comet that like streamed through the sky and then she got very anxious and then he was murdered. But I think like it's kind of interesting that like we see these celestial bodies as like being harbingers of like the end of like our existence essentially. And I think we play with that a lot in like literature and like not just literature, but I guess like fiction. So like we see that a lot in TV and like science fiction and things like that. And I think that's our way of trying to deal with existentialism. But I think it's more just that we don't have room to be existential in our daily lives. Like I think it speaks to what Carrie's talking about with this like carbon tunnel vision, which is like, okay, well, you're alive. Um, and like, of course, you have obligations, and then we're all individuals with our own individual obligations. So even if we want to do something, like I guess like maybe going back to the students, right? Like they're very anxious. Goal of is to get them to graduate and move on, right? And then get a job, you know? No, but like, you know, it's a goal, maybe not the goal of education, but a goal is to kind of like cycle the students through. And it's like, okay, well, you'll have to learn the system and then, you know, either make changes to the system or learn to live within it. Um, and there's just not, and then when you're young and you're not necessarily like, you know, mature enough to be able, or even like you're just overwhelmed by all of the people who are just going along with the disasters of like urban planning. Like, you know, when you're a child and you're on a road trip and you see roadkill and then you just kind of keep going and then you're on a vacation, you're supposed to have fun. Like that's very that like I don't know what the right word for it is, but it's well, it's not a metaphor because it's true. It literally happens. Like you're supposed to just enjoy yourself while there's all of this unnecessary suffering. Um, so I feel like existentialism is difficult because what do you do?
I mean, I guess the interesting thing about that etymology for me, and when we spoke about it, was that it's something that has to be collectively perceived, right? Like it's disaster. We all see the same sky, so we all see the fallen star. There's a collective experience
But
to it. Like so I thought it was something there's something very interesting there where it is inherently a social perception.
but the thing is, people won't agree. It's not
Yeah.
inherently collective. Like it,
No, and that's what I think our
or like
chapter
there's
was
many
exposing
collectives.
was
Yeah.
that all the disagreement as to what even constitutes a disaster in the first place, right? Like it's not most people do not agree on this, but a lot of the time, right? Yeah. So I like that. Yeah, we looked at a lot of etymology.
Yeah.
In that chapter, Zuzana, we looked at hey Charles, we looked at etymology too. Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. No, thank you,
I
Marion.
feel like maybe Susanna and Scott, like you,
Charles.
sorry, Charles.
Scott is his last name.
No, I know. Uh, Charles Scott. Uh, I feel like you talk a lot about like for like existential, I guess like reflective practice and then acknowledge. Yeah, I guess I'd be interesting to hear a little bit more if you see a connection between, you know, like acknowledging that there's this existential angle and then I don't know, I'm interested in this idea of sacrifice that you have and like whether that plays into it in any way. Do either of you want to talk about that? Yeah. Of course, yeah.
Yeah. You want to jump to sacrifice? Okay. Yeah, we can jump. Well, let's jump to that chapter. So we're gonna remove.
It's up to you, Carrie.
Yeah. It's okay. We'll get out of the chronological zone. So let's just go straight to you guys. Yeah, we'll talk about sacrifice. That's lovely. Yeah, please, Steve. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh yeah, you need a mic. Yeah.
So I'm really interested in, you're talking about existence, existentialism. Charles, you mentioned religions. And I've kind of got an understanding of existentialism hovering over what you're talking about, which is based in my undergraduate studies. I studied Spanish and French literature, and I studied Jean-Paul Sartre's, early texts on existentialism. And I'm wondering how much this, and I'll explain what I mean, how much this take on existentialism relates to your use of the term, because in the Sartrean work, one of the key things is the distinction. He says that an existentialist view of life and the world sees existence preceding essence, which challenges the traditional religious Catholic view that our essence as human precedes our existence, that we have a soul that, inhabits our body, and that So we're born in this existentialist view. We're born with no essence. We're born as a blank slate in a world that is absurd and full of contradictions. So I'm wondering how that makes connections with this kind of educational view that you're presenting. And anyone can answer it, but I think you go first.
Okay, me first. Okay, thanks, Steve.
Actually, can I? Do you mind if I just because I feel like I was hovering around it, but um I was very influenced by Camus specifically. So I've read Sartre. I I think it's good to read. I think for me what was particularly interesting about existential thought is this notion of the absurd. Um but I don't know. I guess I want to shy away from like the bifurcation of like essence and existence because I think we just are. We don't know what comes before and we don't know what comes after, but there's a lot that you exist before you're even aware of yourself, right? Like you're born to your parents and you have all of, like as a child, there's everything from your ancestors that's, not just in your DNA, but in, the way that like you grow in your mother's belly and then how you're born. So you're part of this big circle of relations, even maybe more like Carrie's braid, where some of your like family relationships are quite like it's like a broken um braid where there's a lot of frays and there's just all of that that goes into it and then you're developing over time and then suddenly you become aware, right? Like as a child going to adolescence you become aware of you're here and there's all this stuff going on and you're trying to understand what's going on and it's very confusing. It's like and then suddenly you're an adult and then you're stuck in these systems that precede you but are also developing alongside you. And so I think that's why it's particularly existential because it develops over the course of your existence and it becomes like very complex and you have all of these opinions about like this is how I think things should be done or like I don't have an opinion on how something should be done. And um Thomas, if you don't mind opening the door, I think it's locked. Uh, um, but yeah, so for me, that's in terms of it, it's existentialism to me is just how do you deal with that? How do you when you enter like a new system, whatever that system is, like for me, I feel like the most recent like existential, you know, uh crisis that I had was really working for this mega corporation. It just made me very aware that, even if you're, born like whatever happens and you somehow make it into kind of what capitalism tells you is like a very lauded and like respected like role for like one of the mega corporations that like somehow has its tentacles in like everything in the world. People within they're like all very concerned about their existence and like maintaining what they have even though they have all of this power to like improve things. And I think we just have these like blinders on where we just don't really want to face up to the fact that we will die and that there's like people dying all the time. And it's very uncomfortable to acknowledge they don't want to acknowledge it. And then suddenly something happens to them, like maybe a loved one dies or they're faced with an illness. Um, and we don't like take advantage of those moments to really change things. Um, but like I quit my job, so um and it is difficult though to leave a job like that. But yeah, I think there's things that you can do. But at the end of the day, like for me, existentialism is just acknowledging that you will die. And that's really all it is. It's nothing more complex than that. No, but I think
Can I comment? And it
okay, good. And I think because if you know you're going to die, like you have to I'm sorry if this is like a like either commit suicide or live. Like to me, that's that's the question that like went through my head is like, if you're not going to kill yourself, like you have a duty to live and like live in a way that, where you feel like me, like you, like speaking to myself, like where I felt that I was trying to at least live with some integrity and especially because not everyone can do that. I feel like if you have that choice and you have to make, like I felt that I had to make the choice because I don't like to be a hypocrite.
Can I comment on this? Yeah, I think in terms of thanks, Marion. I think in terms of the book, I'm trying to practice something that I would call evolutionary existentialism, where because I try to I try to be, as much as I can, I try to grapple with the mystery of evolution and the fact that I've evolved. We've evolved. And I like to think, in education, we have a lot of we have so many discourses and framings that focus on the capacities of the individual, the innate moral self who makes rational, good decisions. And a big part of the framing is I kind of think of, yeah, you look at our evolution, our hominid evolution, kill sites 500,000 years ago, a million years ago. I don't really see a lot of individual decision makers. I see a lot of collective, distributed roles in decision making, and I personally think for myself, I'm not very good at making individual decisions either. I don't make decisions in a vacuum. So I think a lot of it is trying to think about our existentialism from a deeper evolutionary vantage point. At least some of my work likes to look at that, and it is at least suggested in this book that there is some deep history here that influences how we exist. That's what I would add to what Marion is saying. But Marion is kind of speaking from a more like personal Camus type place. What's like, what does this mean for you living today? Which is a really important question in the book too. What does this mean? How to be here? You know what I mean? Like, which is literally Tim Lilburn's chapter. Do you want to? Yeah, maybe that's a great time actually. Do you want to? Maybe we can segue to Tim in that case. Sort of out of yeah. Well, Tim actually is the next interview here. So yeah, Tim, maybe we can if you'd like to. I'd love to hear from you about the chapter that you have in the book here, and which is really just a reflection of like 10 years of talking with you about your work, about what you've been grappling with, all the complexities of how to be here, which is I think have been such a central part of your work for decades, going back to the 90s, going back before then. Taking the question of the word you love using, autochtonicity, how to be autochthonous, taking that seriously. Yeah, Tim, maybe I'll just put it off to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Cary, and congratulations again on this accomplishment, and congratulations to everyone else who participated in it. Um, I think that I was involved with this book before the book was even conceived, was even thought about.
True. Yeah.
I remember a gathering that took place in Victoria, just in my living room, just a couple of steps away from where I am now. You were at it, Cary. Jan Zwicky was at it. Helen Marzoff, people who eventually became core to this new press, Deer Mountain Pages, this Samizdat press. And you had joined us. And I think all of us were a bit confused about how the conversation would evolve. But we were talking about what political and interior revolutions had to occur in order for us to live into this era of what I call new sadness. Um, what I was really struck by in your participation in that conversation was your compassion for your students. You were very keen to discover ways to meet them and to um, and you were concerned to build a kind of refugium for your students. So your approach to the climate question was not along the angle of autochtonicity. It was not about activism. it was about care and solidarity. And I still think that. I mean, I've read patches of the book, and this to me is where it really glimmers, frankly.
Thank you, Tim, and you're very much right. Like those meetings at your house, those dialogues beforehand, they were the book before the book existed. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was fulsome conversation, which is I take from your work. That philosophy itself is fulsome, nourishing conversation. So thank you. Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Um, and I just yeah I just want to also say Jan Zwicky, Deer Mountain Press, Deer Mountain Pages, Tim Lilburn's press. Yeah, just a little shout out at least to that lovely that endeavor that your endeavor here to bring this work yeah, to the world. I've cited some of Jan Zwicky's poem "Say It" at the end of one of these chapters. Yeah, I think her work, your work, this work that you're speaking to, was an important starting point because you were people who were you were already you weren't starting from what now, what do we do. You were starting from the place of how do we be in this sadness, this new sadness, and you were interested in articulating it as something new, which I also was drawn
Absolutely.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm rambling, but I just wanted to kind of put these pieces together for myself. Yeah, so it was very attractive to this idea that there's something new here that my students are grappling with, that I'm grappling with, that you people have been grappling with before me. Um, yeah, it was very important, and it was very intergenerational too. Like it was various people, different points in their lives, trying to grapple with this. So just very important to the whole thing.
And fundamentally, we don't even have the language to take this on, to inform the imagination on what steps to take.
Yeah, yeah, and exactly. So, which is why I think your work, poetic philosophy, poetry, searching for new language. Yeah, new language. So important. New sounds. Yeah. Well, thank you, Tim. I'll just say, Tim. Since I know it's hard. It's always harder to include the Zoom people. So, just if you want to comment on anything, please just jump in. Just make yourself known here. And at any point in the conversation. And same for everyone else here. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm actually happy since we're jumping around now. I was originally going chronological, but I don't. There's no need to go chronological. So we moved from disaster, which was a key opening in what's happening, which then confronts you with what is it? What do I do with this? How do I be here? Marion, we were trying to connect it back to Charles and Zuzana and he soon sacrifice. Do you want, maybe we can bring them in now? What was the connection to sacrifice that was raised? Marion, you had a lovely connection between, I can't remember, existentialism, um, disaster, sacrifice. Yeah. Anyway, I'll let Zuzana take it away. Yeah. I'm setting you up very badly.
Thank you, Cary. And it's such an honor to be here with these wonderful people, and especially after Tim. Um, oh, if I can just pick up on the existentialist question, and I find it so fitting that we're talking about existentialism here because I think in terms of meaning and purpose. When I think of existentialism, I think in like why do I exist, and what is my connection with all the larger web of life and the cosmos and the beings that are out there. A project on sacrifice. So this if I can just tell it as a story, because I think this always works better. He soon and Cary and we wanted to do a presentation for this environmental education conference. And Cary just kind of put his hat in the ring by saying, well, by sharing a piece of music. And I thought, wow, that's so brave and courageous. And I really love this. And so I very bravely also just shared an art piece that I'd been working on. And then he soon stepped in with the etymology of sacrifice, and then it kind of blossomed from there. And I just want to share that I began thinking about sacrifice, or we all collectively began thinking about sacrifice. For me, it was a very specific point. It was midwinter, this very reflective time at the end of December. I was reading an essay from by Paul Crow, and he speaks about research that cites how the general public is generally unwilling to sacrifice our comfortable and convenient lifestyles for the greater ecological good. And this kind of sat with me. And I thought, what really is sacrifice? Like what, considering how much we have to lose and all that is at stake and the harm that we are causing, what really is sacrifice? And it really stuck with me. And so then we kind of continue the conversation. And the other part of this is in all these, you mentioned that this kind of tunnel vision for carbon with carbon, and there's so much on what forms of energy and renewable forms of energy. And I keep thinking, what if we just used less, altogether? That doesn't seem to be part of the conversation. And then again, like, is that really so much of a sacrifice considering the larger things that are at stake? And he soon brought in this etymology, that the etymology of the root of the word sacrifice means to make sacred. And so then we started thinking about, what does it mean to make sacred? And what does that mean in our time, here and now? Because when we look at the history of the word sacrifice, we don't, in our modern time, have very positive associations with the word at all. Like, nobody wants to sacrifice. Why would you want to do that? Because it has to do with renunciation, death, loss, denial. We don't want to deny. We don't want to give up our, we don't want to give things up. We want to continue as we're going in our, current way of life. And so then, but if we look at it in terms of making sacred, and again, that's a word like in our current secular age, how do we bring this in ways that are meaningful and inviting? And the sense of invitation was really important to me here, because I think we know enough, especially in the field of education and pedagogy, when you tell people how to be morally, it usually doesn't work. You kind of need to invite people into experiences so that we can experience things for ourselves, and so that we can get a feel for things and kind of go, yeah, I'm interested in more of this. And we don't even need to have the words for it necessarily, but we need to feel our way through it. So I thought, well, how can we find really, my question was, how can we find really meaningful ways of leading satisfactory lives, contented lives that don't do harm to the planet? And like that, I think that is kind of the question of the Anthropocene, really. Like, how do we live within the carrying capacity, your term, but how do we do it in ways that we feel a sense of contentment? And so we need to redefine what contentment is. And it comes down to these things of meaning and a sense of meaning that we have. And Charles and He Soon and Avi have written this beautiful article on relationships, and relationships, connectedness with ourselves, with each other, with the world around us, in the natural world. And so it came down to this sense of deep relationality. And for that, it's very difficult to do in our rushed world, when we're not even noticing things, when we're not even stopping to notice the beauty of everything around us. And so a lot of my work, in my artwork, I'm really interested in noticing really subtle beauty that is just not possible to notice if we're just rushing through and focusing on being productive. And to me, there's a deep sense of meaning there, and there's a sense of relationship with ourselves and with places. And then how can we do that together pedagogically, so that the relationships are also with each other, and we're doing this as a collective? Sorry, I've gone on.
Thanks, Zuzana.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Wow, Zuzana. Follow up with that. But coming back to Steve, I can't resist. Jean-Paul Sartre. So, yeah. And Jean-Paul Sartre, as you know, is the either or guy. And I'm the both and guy. And my two favorite existential philosophers are Martin Buber. And Martin Buber once said his work lied on the narrow ridge between either or, this and that. And it really shows up in his philosophy. And my second favorite comes back to what you were just talking about, and what Tim and all of us have been talking about. And my second favorite existential philosopher is the author of The Little Prince, Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And Saint X was a relational philosopher. He was a relational existentialism, that the essence of life lay in relationships with one another. And that's where we found meaning and purpose and vision. And that's where we found the sacred, that it was in that space. And when you read his novels, they're filled with the beauty of it. And The Little Prince captures most of that. But coming back to the sacred, Yuri Bronfenbrenner, the great child developmental psychologist, once quoted a Russian saying, "What would you pay people to do that a mother will do for free?" And that's a profound thing to say. What would you pay people to do that a mother would do for free? And for me, what that intimates is, well, what is it that a mother would do for free? And why would she do it for free? And I think that's the key question. Why would she do what she does for free? And the answer that I come back to is devotion. She has devotion. She has a devotion to the child. And of course, we talk about fathers as well, and all caregivers. And two of the things that we explored in the chapter, what gets you to devotion? Well, Mary Oliver had a great answer, I think. She had a little essay in her collection, Blue Irises, where she says, attention is the beginning of devotion. And that's a theme that shows up in Tim's work repeatedly over and over in his books. Attention, the contemplative focus. And that's what we've noticed in our contemplative education program, the MED program that Hisun and Laurie Anderson and I coordinate, and Zuzana's teaching in, and Celeste and Vicky teach in. That focus on attention and the pause and slowing down. And that creates this reflective space that's communal. It's a communal collective space. And so much emerges in and out of and through that collective space. It's a remarkable thing to be a part of. I don't know if there's anything more you wanted to add.
Sorry, when you mentioned Mary Oliver and devotion and attention, one of my favorite lines from her is, "You too can be made anew by the details of your devotion."
Can you say that again, Zuzana?
You too can be made anew by the details of your devotion. Just a couple of other thoughts that came forward is with meaning and existential. Sorry, did you want to go on to?
No,
sorry,
not at all.
I
I was just aware that Michael is going to respond after you, but please go ahead, Zuzana.
Okay.
No, don't worry, yeah. Don't worry. We're here to hear from you. And
Yeah, so I was thinking with the sense of sacrifice, I was thinking again of the sense of lack. And again, Jan Zwicky speaks of this very beautifully in the experience of meaning, where, there's this really beautiful line where she says, a sense of unhappiness does not come from a sense of lack, but from a sense of superfluidity. Superfluidity. When we have too much, which is when we're looking at our world right now, it's just so much excess and chasing more and feeling like we need to be more. And this is something I see in my students a lot, is this constant pressure to be more, to have more, to do more. And so I tend to think of these, these where does the real genuine sense of meaning lie? And it's not in chasing all the sense of more, because all the sense of more is doing so much harm to the planet and to us. And of course, it's very much fed by the whole capitalist paradigm, is that we're not enough as we are. We need to be more. We need to have more. And so, and also the other thing I wanted to say was this, and you'd mentioned this before, I think, or you'd alluded to it, Cary, the sense of deficit, right? Like we need to lose something of ourselves. Like what now? What's really happening? What do we do now? And we can think of it in real deficit terms. Like this is dire. Like we have to face it. It's dire. Like also Tim Lilburn, Jan Zwicky speak about the importance of being present, really being there and facing what's there. But at the same time, I think we can really find, here I come back to beauty again, but just really simple everyday senses of meaning are way more special than what all this capitalist stuff is promising us. And yeah, I'll stop.
I just want to add, I think that's a nice, lovely to have you three up here because I think there's some nice through lines between your chapters in particular where it's like we do similar things. We grapple with something through etymology, then we share stories, different stories about our encounters with these phenomenon, and yeah, it's a grappling. It's us, it's all of us. You know, your chapter with Marion, the chapter with you three. It's us grappling with stuff that we're just, you know, it's very hard for us to be in. It's very hard for us to be in the stuff we're grappling with. And I like what you said about attention. I just want to say I think that's so key. James Gibson, the person, the psychologist who came up with the term affordance, he often said that the perception, you know, realizing, actualizing an affordance is an education of attention that involves two dimensions. First is you have to be exposed to the affordance, exposure, what's happening, interruption. I think that's so key because there's things that it's hard for us to be exposed to. And I think that's something that we were grappling with, Marion, that you were speaking to. It's like the difficulty of acknowledging an accident, of acknowledging crisis, of acknowledging disaster and the complexity of that. And then once you're exposed, you have to attune to it, attunement, you know, so tuning. Very general ideas, but I think it's so key, right? That we are exposed and we have to tune in after that. So thank you. Sorry, Zuzana, were you going to say anything else? And yeah. Yeah, no, of course. I'm aware of Michael, and it's actually great. Thank you. Yeah, Michael, let's have you enter the conversation. Lovely to have you.
Well, it's lovely to be part of this. I wish I could be there in the room, but I'm grateful that we can assemble this way as well. And there's many more of us out here who I'm sure want to make some offer some things. I know Maria in particular. I want to make some space for you as likely our furthest away guest in space and time. Cary, I just want to congratulate you on the book, as all of us are, and also to thank you not only for the opportunity to participate as a conversant with you, but also for the larger project of it, because I think what you've created is really something very profound, and it gives us not a how-to resource, but let's think these things through together resource. And so I really want to again congratulate you and appreciate you for what you've created. And again to have invited me into it, I'm very grateful because, as you know, and others probably know, I don't write much. So most of what I have to share is very evanescent and transient, and it disappears with the breath.
So we had to write down the conversation.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for that too, that it has some presence that is beyond the immediate when I'm speaking and conversing with people. I don't want to go on too long, but I hope this is a meaningful link in the chain of conversations that we've had so far. And that is that what you and I talked about, this idea of the widening circle of relations, is precisely about developing attention and awareness in these outward expanding circles of connection through attention and intention that we might make. And again, part of the idea initiated with this critique of the idea of the other than human or the more than human, to see that the relationality element is critical here. And so I think a key part of the widening circle of relations as beyond what it is conceptually is very practically in terms of how do we engage in the widening or a widening of our circles of relation as a practice. And so, as you know, and a few others know, I was quite informed earlier in my younger adult life by Buddhist contemplative practice, and I still hold those things with high esteem. But what you and I talked about, and what I've been thinking more and more about, is how do we help create everyday practices, whether that's through making through whether that's through engaging with each other, whether it's being attentive to our environments in various ways. But again, to think of it in terms of starting with ourselves and moving outward. What does that look like to engage in that as a practice and oscillating inward and outward in an ongoing way? It strikes me that a lot of contemplative traditions are very much about that, right? It's how do we think of ourselves in the world and moving out further into that world and then bringing it into ourselves. Your own reflective practice courses are based around that very fundamental idea, as I recall, which I'm very grateful for you articulating as well. Yeah, I might just leave it there, other than just picking up on this idea of that Marion movingly brought to us, right, of finality and of mortality. How this connects in the here and now for me with respect to the widening circles of relation is we lost a member of our community just the other day, Leonard Cohen.
That's right.
And many of us who knew him as this very kind, very capable, always present, always willing to help you out with something, whatever you needed, out at Cary campus in particular, was an example, I think, of someone who gave so much of themselves in such a modest way that connected us to each other. What I've noticed in our conversations, those of us who knew him and who've been expressing grief at his loss and passing, at the loss of him and his pass through his passing, is what he meant to us as someone who is part of our widening circle of relations. And so to be able to hold that and dwell in it, and to be able to just allow whatever arises from it to be there, but to do it collectively. I mean, this is another theme that I think has been coming out through what many people have been saying. How do we do these things that are part of us as a community, and ideally create that relationality all the more? How do we return to them, right? As objects of attention and contemplation and insight. So I might just leave it there, other than again to thank you, Cary. Again, you really gave me a great opportunity to think these things through with you, and now we all get a chance to think our collective thoughts together with you, and hopefully we'll all continue in certain ways. So, but yeah, thank you again. Just before I pass the mic, as it were, or if I may pass the mic, I was wondering if you'll indulge me in inviting our colleague whom Cary and I have worked with quite a bit in the past, Maria Spichiger, who is coming in very late, I think this night in, are you in Frankfurt, Maria?
Actually, I'm in a Swiss town right now in a hotel.
Oh, lovely.
Yes,
Lovely.
but it's the same time. It's 11:20 by now.
Yeah. Well, if I can pass the mic to you, especially.
Let's do that. Good idea, Michael. Thank you. Yeah, we should
Okay.
hear from Maria before it's so late in the evening.
Yes, well, I'm used to this time. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. This is just the topic of connectedness, and how we can uphold it is to be responsive to it. And I think this event now is just such a connecting pattern. And thank you, Cary. I'm happy and also proud of you that you pulled this together. If I think of our first meeting in 2016 and what you have accomplished in that time, is really, it's just happiness to me. Well, there are so many topics that resound with me. And I was suddenly thinking of a picture that I received from my sister about her granddaughter, who is my grandniece. And it's just 2 years ago that she was 1. And they took her for a walk up, and she was walking early. She was able to walk a little bit, on a mountain hike to the Aletsch Glacier, the glacier, which is the largest glacier in the Alps and has already diminished so much, but is still very impressive, of course. And if it's possible to share this screen, we could look at this picture, I think.
I don't, yeah,
Do
hopefully
you
we
think
can.
it's possible?
It is, it's
Can you
working. It's working. Yeah,
Is
we
it
got it.
working?
It's working, Maria. Yep. We see it. We see it.
This is great.
And
So
Maria,
here she stands, this 1-year-old stands in front of this glacier. And as I said, it's already so much smaller. It came up till here years ago when I was little. And to think that when she is our age, there will be no glacier at all. And this somehow, I thought of it when we talked of sadness, of new sadness, and also of memory, you know. What does memory to us? And I think there's something like a family memory that touches us especially deeply. And to share memories and to uphold them, I think that is just the point that I wanted to bring in right now. And just as an example, without very much of a philosophy right now.
Well, thank you, Maria. It's such a lovely thing to share. And
Yes,
so personal. And it's so crazy to think that we met like over 10 years ago. I know.
that's right. That's right.
Oh my God.
But it's beautiful.
I know it's beautiful. It's so lovely. I'm so, I'm very emotional that so many lovely friends from close and afar are here. And it's honestly so amazing. Um,
And I was
thank you.
very happy to hear Marion and Zuzana, of course.
Yeah. Your old
Yes,
friends. Your
we
old
are
friends from
friends.
Vancouver. Yeah.
Absolutely. So best wishes so much for my contribution, but I will attend for a little longer.
Great. Thank you, Maria. Yeah, you'll have to go to bed at some point. I know. We're so happy that you could be here.
Yes.
No, yeah, no, and I just want to say everyone, thanks, Robin. People here, like, yeah, that's a lovely point Michael made too. Yeah, please, does anyone else want to comment on yeah, anyone in the audience as well? Yes, please do. You can interrupt. Yes. How are we for time? Oh, yeah, we are. Jeez. Yeah. Yes, that's already happened. Yeah. Great. Great. Thank you. Yeah, no, time flies by so fast. So thank you everyone for being here. Get out of here if you need to leave, for God's sake. I actually just want to say something really quickly because I totally forgot. Sorry, was that? Oh, yeah. Thanks, Marion. Yeah, and yeah, people kindly set up some lovely snacks and drinks. So just yeah, Cindy did. So Cindy and Quincy. Yeah. So just thank you. Grab some snacks. And I just actually want to say I forgot to thank Anna Rumjan and Chris Yakimov. Anna Rumjan's in the room. Chris Yakimov's on. He hearted the screen. He's online. They were the copy editors or the editors of the book, both copy editing and total editing, the full 9 yards. So we're just so grateful to have you both here. You guys did a rush job. I gave you like 3 weeks to do it all, and I don't even know how that came together. So, geez, no one else would have put up with it except for you two. So thank you. Anyway, I had to really thank you. Do you want to say anything, Anna or Chris? You don't have to.
I didn't
Go ahead, Chris.
I didn't hear whether we're out of time or not.
We are effectively out of time.
Okay, then I won't. I will limit myself. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you, Cary, for giving me the opportunity to read through many of your chapters of your book, and to see where it's come from. And, as a teacher myself, the fact that a lot of this passion is animated by your responsiveness to students. That really resonates with me. But also the fact that you've brought so many voices into this, and you're practicing what you are theorizing about, which is this relationality. And you are showing that time and time again through who you've invited, these panels, the way you build community. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm just trying to go around and anyone who wants to comment or any final words of the panel to Michael's right. Deaf was a big theme. Marion brought it up. We barely talked about it, but it's in the book. Deaf literacy. It's in the book. Yeah. Zuzana, maybe. Yeah.
I think we should have questions from folks here, but I just want to say thank you, Cary, for this collective conversation. It's really important, and for your wonderful work. Thank you,
folks. Honestly, thanks, Thomas. Too. Thomas showed up late. I mentioned you in the beginning. You weren't here. Yeah. So. Yeah, no, thank you, everyone. So many lovely friends. Yeah, we have audience questions. Since you're still here, we have the opportunity. I'll pass you this microphone. Or we just talk and hang out. Thank you for being here. Thank you for celebrating. The Zoom people, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, great. Okay. We'll call. Thanks, Zoom people. Okay. Thanks everyone for came on to Zoom. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Are we closing down?
I think we're closing down this section. People are gonna hang out a bit in the room, but honestly, thank you so much.